Hi everyone, Harris here with iDownload Blog. So I've been using the Pixel 4 XL for a while now, and I want to give my perspective on it from a daily iPhone user, somebody who's been using both these phones a lot, to get a feeling of how this compares to the iOS and iPhone experience, as well as how it compares to some other Android phones on the market. So let's go ahead and get started with my Pixel 4 XL review from an iPhone user's perspective. So I think one of the biggest factors of this phone is actually one of the things that it emphasizes the least, and that's its build quality and its design. So this distinguishes itself very clearly from a lot of the Android community in terms of the Android smartphones. I mean, if you look at the Note 10, you can just see how reflective and bright and shiny and fingerprinty and curved this phone is. The Pixel 4 and the 4 XL is almost the opposite of that. It's got a flat back, it's got matte sides, a matte back. In fact, only the black version of this phone has a glossy back. It's a smooth, soft feeling phone. And then there's no crazy curves on the front of the glass. It's a relatively typical sandwich style phone that isn't crazy chamfered, isn't crazy glossy, and isn't crazy curved. And that just means it's comfortable and simple and subtle. And I think that because this is so simple, it reminds me a lot of the iPhone, which isn't trying to be flashy, it's just trying to feel good in the hand and not have too many design issues that come from curved edges. And I think that Google isn't trying to make a big deal. They're not trying to sell this phone because of flashy colors or reflective sides or anything like that. There's very minimal branding. We just have a Google logo on the bottom. So I like the build quality and the construction, but there's no denying that the design language is a bit outdated. There's a big forehead on this phone, and the bottom chin is fine. There's not too much bezel there, and the sides are okay, but there's definitely a lot of that top bezel. And while I did say that I do really like holding this phone, it's comfortable, it's flat, and it's not obtrusive with its curves, when I do hold something like the Note 10 and I just see how much screen is in that real estate, it does make the Pixel feel a little bit outdated. Heck, even the iPhone. So I've got the 11 Pro Max here and just so much more display for the screen size. I mean, if Apple is already minimizing its bezels, it's weird that Google isn't. And Google clearly isn't trying to keep up with the trends of notches or camera hole punches. They're doing their own thing, and well, it does feel a little bit outdated, but I do appreciate at least that they're not forcing anything into their phones and trying to do something that they're not comfortable with. But regardless of all of that, it definitely still has a bit of an outdated design, doesn't take full advantage of the size in terms of putting as much screen as possible. So that's something you will have to live with. You're not getting as much screen to body ratio as you're getting with a lot of the competition on the market. But at the same time, if you don't like notches or you don't like camera hole punches, this phone's for you. It's simple. Okay, so if Google's not trying to make a statement with the physical hardware and the hardware features, then clearly they think that software is where they're going to win people over, and I'd have to agree. In combination with the subtle, simple hardware, the non-flashy hardware, I think the software on here is really good. So obviously, because it is a Google device, you're getting the newest operating system, Android 10. That's great to see because not a lot of other Android phones out there will be getting the newest software updates, which of course you've probably heard again and again. And it's stock Android. It doesn't have any custom carrier or manufacturer layers on top of this, and I think outside of what OnePlus does with their Oxygen OS on their OnePlus phones, this is, I think, my second favorite Android experience, and I think it's what Google wants out of their software, clearly due to the fact that this is what they're shipping natively. I particularly like dark mode. That's new to Android. It's weird that dark mode doesn't have an automatic day and night transition feature, which is something that obviously the iPhone has, so I guess that's one advantage. But of course on Android I can download an app that'll let me customize those settings. So dark mode is here on the Pixel. I like that with Android 10. This has an always on display. That's something that's really nice for checking the time, notifications, things like that. Without even waking up the phone, I can see certain information. There's also smaller features like the ability to have background song recognition. So on the bottom of my display, when it hears music, just in the background, it'll just tell me what song that is, and I can even get a list later of all the songs that it's recognized, which is awesome if you hear that song in the store that you really like, and then you go home, you can go back through the list and see what song that was. They also have new gesture features, so I can control my media just by running my hand over the screen, which actually works kind of well. So if I have my phone flat on the table and I'm playing music, I can just swipe over and it will change the song. That's kind of cool. It doesn't work perfectly, but it works well enough that it's something that I have been using, and it's simple, but it works nicely for controlling media and like snoozing alarms. And then it's got the squeeze on the side, which isn't terribly useful. I mean, it's basically the same amount of effort as holding the power button on the iPhone to get to Siri, but squeezing it allows you to get to Google Now. It also allows you to mute notifications and things like that. It's essentially just a power button that you don't have to go up to the side of the phone to click the power button for. So the squeeze is a little bit gimmicky, but it is also cool. There's probably applications that will let you customize the squeeze to do more things. And of course that leads to Google Now. And Google Now, I think, is objectively better than Siri. Google Now will do more things. It's a little bit quicker, more responsive, and it just syncs a little bit better with Google's whole personalized custom feed that they have on the home screen, that you can get news and updates and sports and all that kind of stuff, which is just a little bit more baked in than Siri is with her smart Siri features. So Google Now, I think, is definitely an advantage and something that I look forward to using on Google phones. And then the last thing I want to talk about in software is its gestures. So I always will prefer to use gestures on a phone rather than the buttons, the software buttons, because I just want to maximize the screen real estate. And this basically copies iOS's exact gestures, which I'm not complaining about. They're great gestures. I think the iPhone does them a little bit better. I mean, you've got swipe up to go home, up and hold for the multitasking, and side to side to switch apps. Definitely copied it from Apple, but I'm not going to complain. But they do take it one step further. You can actually go back on pages with the swipe from either direction of the screen. This actually proves useful depending on the hand that I'm using with my phone. So I'm using my right hand. It's nice to be able to swipe from the right edge, or my left hand to be able to swipe from the left edge. It does kind of complicate certain applications that have menus that you pull over from the side. You kind of have to hold it and wait for it to catch before you can drag it over, which is one disadvantage of the system. But overall, it's pretty similar, and I like the gestures on here, getting rid of those on-screen buttons. And I guess what's next is the camera. So Google's Pixel has always been well known for amazing software that takes its physical hardware, which is good, and makes it amazing, and they've done this again. Whereas last year with the Pixel 3a that I was using, and I still have, I could take night mode pictures and I could see things in darkness that I just simply couldn't see on the iPhone. Now the iPhone has caught up and has really nice night mode that I can see things that I normally wouldn't otherwise be able to see. And it's pretty similar to the Pixel. So the Pixel doesn't really stand out. It might be better in some circumstances and worse in others, but in general, it's pretty much on par with the iPhone. And in general, the video, photo, portrait mode, they all kind of balance somewhat with the iPhone. And the Pixel 4 is an amazing camera for sure, and it's got the 2x zoom, but it doesn't really stand out as much as it did in the past. That isn't to take away from its camera, but it does have a very good camera. It's got a pretty simple camera UI. I didn't feel like I was losing much going from the iPhone to the Pixel, nor from the Pixel to the iPhone, which is a good thing because they both have amazing cameras. And then the display. So I have the 4XL. I think I'd prefer the regular 4 because this is definitely a bit bigger than my 11 Pro, which I'm using day to day, and it's pretty similar to the Pro Max. It's actually a little bit taller than the iPhone 11 Pro Max, but narrower. It's got the skinnier aspect ratio, and the display is pretty good. Of course, one of its bragging features is that it has a 90 Hz refresh rate on the display, which is great, but you also have to go into developer settings and force it to use 90 Hz all the time so that it doesn't dictate based off the screen brightness. And it really kills your battery if you're using it with high brightness and using it a lot. So this seems like a feature that Google's kind of bragging about on this phone, or really highlighting and proud of on this phone, but the fact that it isn't really ready to go and isn't really practical to use all the time just means that it probably shouldn't have been shipped at all, and that's just a little bit disappointing. So Google can fix this and make a 90 Hz display that works all the time and doesn't destroy the battery life. The battery life, which already isn't very good, definitely worse than the new iPhones, which have pretty stellar battery life. I think that this would be a much better phone, but as it is, the display is fine. It doesn't blow my mind. 90 Hz is nice. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I do commend Google for not trying to throw in as many features as they possibly can into a phone and trying to focus on the basics. I think they do fall behind a little bit on the design. Like, I would like a bigger display on this size phone, and I also would like better battery life for sure. So it's not a perfect smartphone, but I think if you're looking for something that's most comparable to the iPhone, I think the Pixel probably has that. And so from an iPhone perspective, the Pixel 4 is a really solid phone with certainly a lot to improve. And it's pretty easy to recommend if battery life is something that isn't your number one concern, unfortunately. Anyway, let me know what you think of the Pixel 4. I'm enjoying this. I'm going to keep using it. Thanks for watching.